Hi everyone, Religious Fanboy here again. And I'm going next week we'll be starting a, a second Bible study on the book of Judges. But today for this video, before since Judges is kind of a book and it's kind of in a different writing style, different format than all the other books that we've studied so far, due to it being one of the historical writings. Um, I'm gonna give some background information, and that's what this video is dedicated to. Um, I think it's um I'm gonna provide. Let's start with talking about the job of the judges, what their job was. Um, like they kind of had similar jobs as the prophets did, or at least that's part of what they were intended to do. As well as they were sent by God and used by God to in time time periods throughout the book of Judges. Different people were used to overthrow um, different different societies that had taken over Israel and had been oppressing them. Um, and prior to the leading up to, and now with that, the job of the judges being kind of explained, I'm gonna go and we're gonna start with okay. In the book of Genesis, we um hear about Abraham, where God told him that your offspring will bring across like the savior of the world will come from you, and since we're all children of we all are from the come from the line of Abraham, like that's how this is true, because like even though Jesus was divinely made, how he entered this world was through the Virgin Mary, who is person, and hence being a person meant she came from the line of David. I mean, she came from the line of Abraham. Um, After Abraham and his, I can't quite remember his wife's name right now. Uh, if you know in the comments, please put it down. Um, I feel like it starts with an A, but I don't quite remember right now the name. Um, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I don't remember it. But but Abraham and his wife had had Isaac, and and then Isaac married a woman named Rachel, and they had Jacob and Esau. Um, and through some shenanigans and deception on the part of Rachel and Jacob. Jacob ended up getting Isaac's blessing, and Isaac would later marry two women. It was Isaac and Rebecca. Isaac and Rebecca, and they had Jacob and Esau and Jacob. Esau was the firstborn. They were actually twins, but Esau was first to be born. Um, and Jacob would later go on to um, marry to have two wives, Leah and Rachel, and Jacob would be considered to be the son of the father of Israel, and of the children of Israel. Um, he and he would have about, I think he had a little over 20 total, 20 children in total. And I don't know if it was that generation, like the generation of Jacob's kids, or the next generation, but that's where we got Joseph and his brothers. Not the Mary and Joseph, the coat of many colors Joseph. And through his stories, he kind of, out of, due to some things happening throughout his life, following him being sold into slavery by his older brothers, he found his way to Egypt, and during during his time in Egypt, he the Pharaoh had a dream that worried him. It was the dream was there were seven good healthy cows that would be devoured by seven sickly cows, which what this meant and what this was pertaining to was, even though Egypt was in this time of prospering and had like plenty of food, it was a warning of the coming years of drought and famine that would be throughout the land. So, and through that, Joseph was able to warn Pharaoh and the officials there, so they could start like rationing food and preparing for the drought in the years of famine. And through this kind of credibility of Joseph that he gained through God helping him through adversity in Egypt, he was able to help many people and help people not be as negatively affected by the famine, as well as he eventually his relationship with his family would be restored by them going to Egypt and meeting him years later after they had sold him into slavery, and Joseph forgave them. Um, and during the years of famine, jo- um, Joseph's family and him would live among the Egyptians in Egypt, and the um, and they would have and this would be a few generations after that where like the king, the emperor of Egypt, would be told of a prophecy of a young Israelite male, of of an Israelite rising up and overthrowing him, or something along those lines. So what he did was he ordered for every Israelite child under the age of 2 to be killed. Um, but Moses' mother did not want to kill her son, so he, she sent him in basket where down a creek where he would be picked up by one of the Pharaoh's daughters, and he was raised by them. This baby is Moses. If you don't remember the story of Moses, that is okay. I'm kind of going over multiple books right now. I'm kind of briefly summarizing stuff. Um, we will study all these eventually, promise. But for right now, I'm doing this summary so we get the gist of what's been going on in Israel since Abraham up to the events of the book of Judges. Um, and Moses, due to him killing an Egyptian who was whipping and abusing power he had over Israelite slaves, for the Pharaoh, since the Egyptians were afraid of being overthrown by the Israelites, since after a few generations of Israelites living there, since the drought, there was a significantly large population of Israelites in Egypt at the time. So to keep them pinned down and keep them from overthrowing the Egyptians, they enslaved them. So so that's why they're slaves. That was why. They aren't slaves anymore. Um, I I I got used present tense when I should be using past tense. Um, and Moses fled from from Egypt after killing the Egyptian. Um, and that is like during his time of, I guess you could consider it self exile because he was hiding. Um, this is where the burning bush discussion would happen. Um, and That's when he would be instructed by God to free the Israelites and lead them out of Egypt and lead them to the promised land. And there were 7 plagues that God had used in order to force Pharaoh to let the Israelites free. And after the 7th one, which the story of the 7th one and how the Israelites would be protected from that last plague is, which the last plague was the death of the first child of every house, which this is how the tradition and holiday of Passover began, was that the way they would be protected would be if the family were to kill the purest lamb and use the blood of the lamb to put on the linings of their doors, like of the door area, like the door opening, like the perimeter of around the door frame. Yeah, the door frame. And then mentally, like verbally think out the words to get it. But and this was the plague that eventually got the Pharaoh to the point where he set a lot of the Israelites to go free. Which, like, soon after this was the parting of the river. When, like, how Moses, with God's, like, by God parting the river, Moses was able to lead the Israelites through, and then this was also when a little later is when God would talk to Moses on the mountain, and the first set of the 10 Commandments would be carved into the stone by God. And due to like some sins that followed, such as the worshipping of false idols of the children of Israel, as well as like the sin of Moses disobeying, they had to wander in the desert for 40 years instead of, and Moses still used God to establish the rules and tradition of the early church, as seen in Numbers and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, as well as preparing the next person to lead Israel into the promise that would, as well as preparing and propping up the person that would lead the Israelites into the promised land. And this would be Joshua, and Deuteronomy ends with the commandments God had given to the Israelites being restated and reshared by Moses to this new generation of the children of Israel. And then Moses goes up on the mountain and he dies. And then Joshua reminds them of what God had done for them and of the laws and traditions as they would enter the promised land and where they would take over territories which would later through conquerings become Israel. And through this time and Joshua, like Moses before, was able to do God's work and was able to be a good example for the Israelites and the children of Israel. And the chapter 1 of Judges starts off towards the end of Joshua's life. It tells of how some of the conquests that he did would happen and of his eventual death. And now I get a very brief summary, but I think for right now we are ready to start reading Judges. And with that being said, may God be with you. And the way I'm planning on doing this, from this week, starting next week, we will be James chapter 2 Bible study is still coming. That will be still this week. And then next weekend, the plan is to do James chapter 3 next Friday. And on next Sunday, so when this is up, it will be a week from today. And also the James Bible study will also be up. James chapter 2 will also be up this Sunday. Well, today. So next week, the plan is James chapter 3 will be on Friday. And we'll officially start the Judges Bible study next Sunday, where we go through Judges chapter 1. And with that being said, may God be with you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.